Love, love, love the idea of this photograph. I'll tell you what I'm nuts about in this picture. I like the fact that the maker in this picture, or the person who took this photograph, chose to photograph through something. I love the whole feeling of what's going on with these twinkly things that are in the foreground. I don't know if it's candles or whatever it is, but I think it's really, really nice. What is bothering me is that there's too much attention. She competes with them. She totally competes with them. If you had moved that subject away from that painting right here, because we want to see her. She's looking in the camera. So we start looking at them, and then we look at her. So I think if you had moved them forward and not let that be a focal point, then this would have been a rock star, because all of this goes with this. The other thing is that the light on them is too bright, and you can tell, Scott, maybe you can address that, the way that they lit that picture.
Yeah, I think they went over there because there was maybe a table there or something, so they could put the flash behind it and light it. Like I said, that's a very popular style, just to put the flash behind and then light the subjects. Again, if you would have brought the subjects closer, and if you would have had that light a little bit less obvious, you could, I mean, in this particular case here, because to the left of the subject, it's just kind of a blurry texture, you could actually have your assistant light them from the side and easily take them out of Photoshop. And a lot of photographers do that when they have a clean area that's not have a lot of detail that needs to be in the picture. They'll literally just put the photographer right there, they'll light it, and then they'll clone it and take it out. And so the light looks a little bit more natural. And so that's what's kind of throwing it off to me, is whenever a photographer does that lighting style, it's cool, it gets, ooh, wow, but then it's not realistic, right? Because you don't always see lighting that way. I always try to create something where the lighting is a little bit more realistic. So I probably would have maybe had my assistant on a stick or something hold the lighting up higher and off to the side, so make it look like there's a light source coming on them.
In addition to that, I think it's the quality of light that bothers me. You see, the whole scene is very soft and very moody and romantic, and then you have this crisp, sharp, small light source. So in order to keep it very harmonious, the light source that they use has to be the right one, and I think that's one of the reasons that photographers need to have a variety of different tools in their toolbox. They need to have strobes, but they also need to have like a continuous light source, like the little ice light or some of the other light sources that are out on the market, because then you can control the amount of output. And I like a continuous light source like the ice light, because I can absolutely control how much light is coming out, and it's a very soft light source. And I think that in this particular context would make a huge difference. And boy, I'd love to see this maker go back to this spot and do something here, because I love their creativity. They're this close.
I know.
They just have, it's like having all the ingredients to make a great cake, but not sure how to put them all together.
Can I go technical here on how to approach it from a technical aspect? Okay, so if I were lighting this situation, first off, I'd set my ISO real high, like maybe 1600, okay? I would capture that background and that field, and because I'm using a high ISO, I don't have to use a flash with a lot of power to give me my light. I could just take a little video light, like my own killer video light, and just turn it on a little bit. Sometimes I diffuse it through an umbrella. I take a simple shoot through umbrella, I stick that light through it, and bam, I just hit them with a hint of light on them to match the scene. Soft light should go with soft light. This case is soft light, but it's hard light behind. So when you're in this situation, stick your ISO high, bring it up to 1600, because if you're using constant light, your shutter speed has to be high too, or else you're going to get a blur.
Not necessarily, unless you're really good at hand holding.
Yeah, well, yeah, if you're good with your hands, then I guess so. But in regards to flash, I could shoot a flash at 1 second handheld and it'd be razor sharp. You can't do that when you're using constant. That's what I mean by that.
That's true.
So that's what I mean, keeping it up above, 50th of a second or so. Okay. I like the idea of what they're going for here, but the expression, I think we could have got a little bit better expression on her face, and I don't like the crop in this situation. That little eye is bothering me, so if you would have went straight down the middle of the face, I think it would have been pulled off a lot better, and a tad bit more of kind of endearing emotion in the face too.
And you know, whenever you do this kind of crop, this can be done very successfully, but the expression has to fit the crop. So in this case, because she just is looking off with her eyes, and then there's that little black spot where the other eye goes, it just looks like you made a mistake. Whereas if you had her going, you know, like, ooh, you know, or had some sort of funky little expression that fit the crop, then it's going to look a lot better. I think I like the idea where the maker's going, and I'd like to see you explore that again. But this time I want you to think not just about the mechanics of a crop, but I want you to think about what goes into the expression that goes along with that crop. I love the camera position on this. I got to tell you, this photograph is really close. I like the way that they treated this. I mean, it's a little bit contrasty, but it doesn't bother me. And why it doesn't bother me is because of the style of the dress that the girl's wearing. If you look at, she's not like one of those perfectly coiffed little brides, and the background and all of there's a lot of harmony to me going on in this photograph. The background is overexposed, but then they went ahead and overexposed all of the other elements, so it doesn't really bother me the way that they treated it. The one thing, if this is an unprompted image, in other words, they didn't pose it, then maybe this is probably as good as you could get. I would like to see where the feet area is. I'd like to see a little bit more room at the feet. But if you prompted this photograph, if this is one that you directed, then what I would like to see you do is not have her with her arms straight. You notice her arms are just like this. See how my hands are? And we don't want that. We don't want to see the back of the arms. First of all, the back of the arm, when you see this part of the arm, is heavier and wider than the side of the arm. So if I move my arms like this part of my arm isn't as large as the back side. So we want to see the side of the hand, not the back of the hand. In addition, if she's got that skirt, instead of having her just go like this and grab it like that, have her grab it not with these two fingers, but these two fingers. You see, look what happens to my arms. You see, when you have that long continuous line, she can lift it. And also, that's step number one, but notice what happens to my elbows. I'm not pulling my elbows out, I'm pulling them back, pulling the shoulders back so that it goes like this. And that way, if she walks, you can see that light trap between her arm and her waist, which gives context to anyone with a waist. So then it makes her look, it looks more believable. She can look down. See how that looks more elegant? The other thing that I would do is if I were prompting this photograph, I would have her walk, not like this, but I would have her walk like this, and like this, and like this. Because something happens to the way that your hips move when you walk with one leg in front of the other. It kind of swivels your hips a little bit. And so this, see how it takes my shoulders and my hips and pushes them. And so that gives you more of a waistline than it does if you just, see how that doesn't look very good. So, Scott.
This is the exact type of photograph that I would have taken maybe 5 years ago. So the difference between me taking a photograph now and versus 5 years ago, I would have saw this particular situation, I would have saw the light, I would have saw how she looked, and I would have taken that picture because I'm photojournalistically capturing the image. I would look at it and go, wait, I have a chance for a masterpiece here. Let's back up and let's do this right. I can spend time on this image and get it right because I could see the potential of it. And so that's exactly what Bambi did. It's like, okay, this is great, but let's make it into a masterpiece. And that's how I shoot weddings a lot of times. I'll be shooting, and then I'll run across something that's almost there, because you're never gonna get that perfect picture a lot of times by just capturing it. You're gonna that's what separates you from the average wedding photographer to the really good photographer, is that you can fine-tune that image, redo it. Like I tell my students all the time, it's okay to hit the rewind button if you see something really good. It's only gonna take you a few minutes more, and then you're gonna fine-tune it and create that masterpiece.
You know, one other thing about this photograph, see, I love the light on this picture. Look at the way, where the main light's coming from. You see, the main light is coming from across here, lighting her face. I mean, it's probably coming from a little bit behind, but whatever is over here is bouncing on this young lady's face, which is gorgeous. It's really pretty. So in this kind of a scene, if I see that environment, when I go to a wedding place and I see where I look around the room, I would pick this spot and say, okay, for sure I want to do pictures there. So in addition to photographing her maybe walking down looking like this, I might want to get her to turn her face back up a bit so that we could see that, and then get her to play a little bit for the camera. Get her to laugh and interact, because this kind of environment lends itself very, very nicely to the more playful moment. It could be a little bit more spontaneous. So
within a couple minutes of just doing those few little things, instead of getting one photo, you can literally end up getting 4 or 5 really great photos.
Okay. First of all, I like the camera angle. I think that you did a nice job. I like the way that you composed the picture. I feel like there's a little bit too much. It's cropped a little bit too loosely. I like the fact that they chose to photograph through those trees. I like trees. I think they can be a very good way to draw your eye right to your subject. With that said, if you look at this image carefully, the house behind them has that white diagonal bar, and it pulls your eye right away from the subject. So I find that that's a bit of a distraction.
Another huge distraction that I couldn't get out of my mind was the length of that tie. It just completely, like, I mean, I think it's great, you know, the expression and the casual moment and the light behind them and everything. But and I think that's being part of a photographer, is noticing these details. And when you have something, you have the makings of a masterpiece there, and then, oh man, look at the ties off. If it's something that we can control, we should try to control that.
Yep. And if you had moved that subject forward to you, if they had brought that subject in front of that, you know, closer to the camera position and moved them up a bit, that house you wouldn't even seen it. And this could have been an amazing picture. Sometimes the length of lens you choose can really make the difference for you. And I don't believe this was a 70 to 200 millimeter lens, but I think that I would choose the 70 to 200 millimeter lens in this kind of context, because you can get rid of a lot of things that are distractions using a longer focal length lens.
Can I jump in with a question?
Yeah. Sure.
I'm wondering, as you're critiquing, do you always start off, it seems like you always start off with a positive comment first and then get into something more critical. Is that true? Am I just imagining that you do that?
Well, I don't, for me, it's not intentional.
Okay.
But I just think that it's important for people to know what they did right. Sometimes if you only identify what's wrong in a picture, then, you know, I think that can be very overwhelming for a person, and they think, well, they just got to start from scratch and start all over. And
when that's not the case.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of cases they might have 7 out of the 10 things right, and then we're just kind of talking about the 2 ones that are not. But you know, that photographer might have done a lot of things well. So we want to acknowledge that.
And hey, if you guys don't mind, I'd like to just jump in, because Noah, who's the photographer here, just wanted to write a little bit of backstory. September afternoon, just before sunset, 3-foot octagon box, octabox camera, right. It was a very special wedding for us because the bride had collapsed that morning, and until 3 hours before this picture was taken, we all thought the wedding would not happen that day. After all the paramedics and the stress, the portrait session was the first moment when the couple could then see each other.
Now, was it this photograph that we see now with the tree?
This exact photograph.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow.
They did a really great job considering what they had, you know, that to me takes a lot of skill. I think sometimes the backstories in a competition, we don't get the luxury of hearing about the backstory. Mm-hmm. So all we can do is judge what's right in front of us. Yeah. But the backstory can be such a huge thing, and that to me separates the men from the boys. When you see someone who, you know, in an adverse situation was able to take something and move it to such a really nice place.
I like this image, the lighting, the composition. Maybe I would have cropped it a tad tighter. On the left-hand side, it kind of feels like maybe it could be a bit closer. But maybe not if they've kind of toned down the brighter areas of this picture, so the subjects would just stick out a little bit more. That would make me a little bit happier. And then if they if they kind of brought out a little bit of the detail on the right-hand side to come through, I mean, it's not bothering me that much, but when you look at that image, you're going, wow, and that has that effect to it.
See, I really like this photograph, and actually, I like the whole panoramic look of it. I started kind of thinking, well, maybe we should crop off that area on the right with those trees. And I think that it would look still very nice either way. The area that I'd like to see this photographer work on, to me, is on the posing. The posing is a bit static. With the bride and the groom, they are standing very flat-footed. You can tell that they're kind of pretty much standing there. Now, you know, obviously, I don't know if with this young lady, maybe I have to cut you some slack, because if she wasn't feeling well, then you may not have been able to get
just
much
to get
from
them
her.
up like that might have been
Just to get them, you know, but if that's, whatever the case is, can you at least get them to get from being standing flat-footed on 2 feet
2 sticks
to 1 foot, you know, so that so it's a bit more believable. Here, cute, stand it. So I want to show everybody your best side. So here, 2 minutes, so I can see your butt. So I would have him, he's going to rock this way, and then she, in turn, would go this way. In that case, with that photograph right here, that main light coming in the way it is, you see how now, to me, it looks more believable. I could look at him, I could look down, you know, they could be, she could come around him. And the cool thing about this is that she could go like this, she can go like this, she could even come and bring her hands on the back of him. So you have a lot, without moving their feet too much. Once you get that weight off and get it on 1 foot, look where I'm at right now. If she's a bigger girl, now she doesn't look very big, but if she were, look, I've cut off half of my body right now. I know I look at least 30, whatever, pounds thinner. But notice what she can do. You can even start moving them this way and bring the face down. Here, give me a hug with that cheek right there. Oh, love it. So those are the kind of things that you can do very quickly. Just identify those small little body parts and finesse it just a little bit, and you've got a really nice
I think that's
shot.
definitely a classic pose that you could use every single time instead of the 2 sticks, right? Just get the groom this, weight this way, lean her this way, look at each other. You do that every single time. That's your go-to. Bam, you got a winner. Go ahead.
And that's the good thing about having something in your bag that is like when you have your plan B, because there's times when you need, like in this case, they would need they would need a plan B, because you know you don't know how long she's going to be able to stand up. If she'd been ill, then you know she may be fainting in the next moment. So, and I figure a photographer who goes to all the trouble to bring an octobank to a wedding reception is probably somebody who is willing to put forth a little bit of effort to do some posing, because it takes a lot of work to do that and to see that. And I think the maker did a great job.
So KK Photography just said, cross having a photo critique on Creative Live off my bucket list.
Oh,
very cool.
Good for them.
Okay, Scotty Scott.
Okay, love the connection here. They've got that nice feel. They got the lens flare coming through. Because they kind of did a high contrast thing, what's kind of throwing my eye off right off the bat is that horizontal line going right through their head. So how could you eliminate that? You either go higher or you either go lower and up, and then just to try to remove that. Again, you know, it's kind of shooting a lot of his back there, so possibly either recropping or repositioning and fixing that. But those are the 2 things that kind of came across my mind.
I'll tell you what I like that the maker did. I like the high camera angle that they chose. That's an important camera angle for this young lady. She's thick underneath the neck. She looks like she has a little bit of a chin. And so the lower camera angle to me would not work with this young lady. You cannot shoot a low camera angle on somebody that has a bit of a chin down there. I also love the fact that he covered part of her arm with his arm. I think that works beautifully, because if you can't see it, it doesn't exist. To me, what would have helped this image and made it a little bit more believable is if he had tilted her head. This is a perfect example of, see how she's standing straight with her chin? She's kind of got her head leaning into him, whereas if she had just said to that young lady, tilt her head just a little bit this way, then 2 things are going to happen. First of all, tilting her head to the left-hand side like that would give her a bit more of a jawline, and it would make that photograph look a little bit more believable. It would give it a little bit more believable. As it is, because it's straight up and down, we see a little bit more of the chin than we want to. I understand why the maker chose to overexpose this, because the background is very distracting. And so in that case, I would probably have gotten up maybe a little bit higher. And if you can't, then this is where let's say that this is what you've got. Because see, there's a trade-off if we go up at a higher camera angle. The higher camera angle means we may not have seen her face properly, and then you've got that light coming in on the right-hand side, the sunlight, which is why there's some lens flare going on. So there are some times when you can't do all of the things that we talk about you wanting to do. So at the end of the day, that dark line going across their head is an easy fix in Photoshop. I would just have gotten rid of that, and then we wouldn't even have seen that.
That's true.
Yeah, I would absolutely have I'd go into Photoshop, use the clone stamp tool under the lighten mode. If you used it in the lighten mode, make 2 layers of your picture, and under the lighten mode in the clone stamp tool, what happens is it only affects the dark pixels. So I'm not kidding you, I literally would have run across that, except for their heads, of course, I would have run across that with a good-sized brush. That would have been gone, like literally just like that. It's such a quick fix. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is just to take some of the light background in the background and make a second layer of that, and then just paint it out where you need to. Doing those few extra things I think could really help this image. See, I don't mind where the camera angle on him. I don't find that bad because I like so much about what's going on with her. I just think a little bit more finessing. Remember with that young lady, tilt her head towards the camera or to the side of the camera, not away, because you don't want to see this part of that jawline.
So if you're getting kind of, what she's saying is doing this, right? And even if she's just leaning a little bit forward, it would make a big difference.
Yes, that's exactly true. So in other words, let's
right?
demonstrate that,
You're doing
Scott.
that, and then
So, so here, so as it is, camera position's like maybe there. So as it is, they're like, he's doing that and she's like this. So now we want to tilt her head this way, and now maybe have her lean this way. See how I'm leaning away this way, like, and now that even drops the shoulder, which is going to mean this part of the arm isn't going to show up as much because we have choices on, like, as they're shooting into the shoulder, okay, we can cover it with his arm, but if you go like that, guess what? It goes away.
One rule that I like to use when posing a bride and I'm looking at it and I see stiffness, and a lot of times is that the shoulders is parallel to the ground, right? So anytime you break that and you turn it, right, it's going to have a more flowing feel to it. And in that case, that's what it does. Leaning forward or repositioning will break that stiffness to it.